2. Alright, just need reference of Chica. That'll do. Yeah, that should be good enough. All right. Hey, Frost. Hello. Hello. Would help if I plug this back in. I have no idea what the grounds mean. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just noticed those, like, what, yesterday or so? Maybe a little sooner than that, but I didn't know what they meant. I'll have to look it up later to find out what they mean. Yeah, it might be from chat, from talking in chat. That's like the best I got. Just tighten up the jaw a bit more. Well, going to be drawing Withered Chica. We'll see what happens. This will be my first take of her. No worries. If you need to go to bed, then go to bed. Favorite archetype? That's kind of hard to say. Because, like, I can like an archetype, but not exactly how they play or have evolved as the game has progressed. But I guess Hieratics and Ogdoadics I like the most. And the Tyranids. Tyranids are really cool. Like, in terms of gameplay, those are definitely my favorites. I also like Toons, but that's because it like warps. I just like the character designs for those. But like gameplay wise, it's kind of hard to say gameplay wise because nowadays a lot of the archetypes kind of do the same exact thing now, and there's like barely any differences between them. Because a lot of the time it's just summon one monster, that monster likely searches for something else. That something else can either be special summoned from the hand immediately, or you discard it to get something else put into your graveyard or add it to your hand. And then, you know, it basically just boils down to spam a bunch of cards, make your end board. Hopefully it has like some ridiculous Omni Negates. If you don't have like 3 Omni Negates, then you're probably doing it wrong or something. So it's like really hard to say which is a favorite nowadays, but in terms of just like card design and like gimmick, then I'd probably say those. And like, you know, like Toons and all that, just because I like the idea behind it. But mechanically and gameplay wise, a lot of the modern decks are essentially the same thing with very, very, very small differences. It's like, oh yeah, this deck does everything all the other ones do, except it makes your opponent's monsters become continuous spell cards, or it makes your opponent put a card to the bottom of their deck, or they can't, or it sends a bunch of their cards from the deck to the graveyard or banished, and that's kind of it, really. Yeah, like unfortunately the underdog archetypes in decks are the ones that are a lot more unique in how they play. But unfortunately, because of how they play, they get severely broken rather easily. So like for example, Ogdoadics, they rely heavily on the graveyard. And so if your opponent does anything that hampers the graveyard, then that deck is basically dead on arrival. So like, you know, Macrocosmos, Necro Valley, DD Crow, like it can get away with being hit by like Ash Blossom because a lot of their cards can trigger in the graveyard even when you use them from the hand to do other things. But anything that fucks with the graveyard are basically screwed. Like the what are they called? I forget what they're called. It starts with a K, I think. Not Tearlaments, but the ones that work with Tearlaments. It's the other one because they're both in the same thing. But it's the one that makes cards that go to graveyard are banished, and then each time a card is banished, it gets equipped to their Exceed monster. Is that deck? But yeah, anything that screws with the graveyard, they're fucked. Yeah, when it comes to underdog, because like at least like to me, the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh now is where a lot of cards that you wouldn't normally want to put in your deck have to be in your deck. So like Ash Blossom, maybe a Kaiju, or Lava Golem, or Raw Spear Mode, like, you know, things that can remove cards from the field without being hampered. Stuff like that. And then the sad part is, like, even if you didn't want to use those cards, you have to, because once a modern deck gets going, there's like little to nothing you can do about it. And if it ends on a board that's like nearly impossible to get through, then it's like, man, you're just watching a game of solitaire at this point. Because like I have a video on YouTube of literally somebody making a board, and this could have been a bot for all I know, but basically a board. It was a Stardust Dragon deck, and it was essentially a 6+ negate board. It was technically like 10 or so, because one of the cards could, or one or two of the cards could do multiple negates in a turn, and it literally boiled down to me doing nothing, because I think it was like 2 or 3 of the cards had an effect where if I played anything, not only would it negate a card that I played, but it would also destroy any card I had in play. So it was like, okay, so I can literally do nothing, or else I lose the only defensive cards I have in play. And the only reason why I even had a chance was because I got to go first. And I'm like, this is what people think is fun? And I know like fun is subjective, but still, it's like when the game boils down to the point where the second player doesn't even get to play, then what are we doing? No, not Tri Brigade. Hold on, let me look it up. It was some. It wasn't. It's like it has to do with the tier element cards, but it's like one in particular. It's like part of the tier element stuff. Is it Reinhardt that I'm thinking of? Let me see as soon as this loads. Come on. Come on, load for me. I don't know why these websites have gotten severely slower. No, it's not Reinhardt, but it's like part of that whole thing. Hold on. Let me move this out of the way so I can see the chat. Oh my dear God, why is it taking so long? But tier elements, I mean, they basically do the same shit too. Only that they can basically just fusion summon repeatedly for cards sent to the graveyard. I can't really forget the name of that card. Yu-Gi-Oh! Kashtira, there we go, that's what I'm looking for. Because I think tier elements use some of those cards, or like the Visa cards. I think it's like a mix of like 2 or 3 archetypes. But yeah, the Kashtira cards were the ones that screw over certain, or like Ogdoadic at least. And then I use I like using the Tyramids. But yeah, like Kashtira is like, okay, your graveyard's dead, and if your deck has anything to do with the graveyard, you're essentially screwed. And true, like other decks can do that too, but back then, cards that would remove the graveyard were easier to deal with than they are with more modern cards. Because with more modern cards, it's like, okay, I'm going to try to get rid of your card. You played this, so that means I can trigger 6 other things. And then not only negate the thing that you were going to do, but I'm going to banish, like, I don't know, I'm just throwing shit out there. I'm going to banish, like, half your deck just because. I was like, oh, okay. and that which is funny because that's essentially what the what is that? Where are those? What is it called? Oh my god, why am I blanking on these cards now? It's like when I see them, I know what they are. Yu-Gi-Oh! The runic cards, there we go. That's basically what the runic cards are. It's like, okay, I prevent you from doing something, and not only that, but I'm going to banish your cards from your deck. Like, it'd be different if it sent the cards to the graveyard, but it doesn't even do that. It's like, no, you literally lose your cards for trying to play. And it's sad because I like Yu-Gi-Oh, but then when there are moments like that, it just reminds me, it's like, oh yeah, this is why I don't play as much anymore. Because it's just becoming more and more one-sided. I mean, it's been that way for years now. That's why they're having a hard time getting new players. Because it's like, well, people like to play the game. Yeah, like I've beaten Exosisters with decks like that, with like Ogdo Addicts, but it's like so fucking difficult because I have to be extremely specific with how I play, or else it's basically just dead on arrival. Because a lot of the times with decks like Ogdo Addict, you have to bait your opponent so often and be prepared to lose probably necessary cards just to have a sliver of a chance. And then when your opponent's able to like activate multiple effects during your own turn and probably get an advantage out of it, it's like I can see why the game is very discouraging. And then that's not even like going into the tournament stuff where you're essentially playing for nothing, because Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments don't give out any financial rewards. And it was kind of different when they would give out like cards that had value and all that, but then when that started drying up, or when that became less and less worth it, it's like I can see why the tournament scene is just kind of like, why are we playing this? But yeah, it's just, as much as I like Yu-Gi-Oh, it's a very discouraging game. And granted, like, Yu-Gi-Oh has been broken, or, you know, has had its issues in the past, even before the modern day cards and stuff like that. But at least back then, it seemed like it was an obstacle that could be navigated through. It's like, oh, okay, you're dealing with, let's just say, Blue Eyes White Dragon. It's like, oh, Blue Eyes White Dragon is a 3,000 monster. Okay, we at least have, like, you know, Tribute to the Doomed, or Raigeki and Darkle and all that. And, like, you know, there were like slow cards to help you deal with the bigger stuff. And it's like, okay, cool, play Dark Hole, play a monster in defense, and then you try to wait it out so you can play stronger cards. And maybe you'll have those moments where Monster Reborn comes into play and it throws off everything, because it's like, oh crap, I just killed Blue Eyes, now it came back, and now it's, you know, destroying all my defensive monsters. So it's like, you know, setting you back. Like, sure, situations like that will happen. But in the modern times, where you're literally trying to come up with every way possible to get out of a tight situation, and everything you do is negated, and not only negated, but probably has a negative effect on you in the process, such as the runic cards, where it's like, no, your card's negated and you lose cards from your deck. It's like, well, damn. It's like, so I get punished for just trying to play the game. Creamfield Chapter 4 being kind of a Yu-Gi-Oh parody. Well, with Creamfield Chapter 4, like, those cards exist. Like, the cards is an actual game. Like, hold on. Open. Like, it's not so much as a parody as it is its own game. Like, here are the cards from that chapter. Like, they exist. Oh yeah, it's let me get a link for it. Like I've been making the cards slowly. Like I need to make more, but I've been making the cards over like probably longer than a decade at this point. Like it's been a slow burn because you know I'm putting time into the comics over the card game stuff, but every once in a while I'll put some time into it. But yeah, here are the current cards that are available. Some of them I pulled off because I'm fixing them up because the cards have been updated since a certain point, so I'm slowly updating them. The art specials are just artwork; they're not like playable cards. Are you asking, am I a furry? I mean, my answer would just be flat out, yeah, why not? I enjoy all the furry stuff, so my answer is yes. But yeah, like the cards that were made in Creamfield Episode 4 are real. And every once in a while I make new cards when I have the free time. And then sometimes I'll just use the artwork that I've made of the characters because I try to have, like, anytime I'm making character art now for my stuff, I try to have it in mind that they're going to be used as cards at some point. So I try to at least, you know, future prepare them for that. And then if there's like anything specific I need to make, then I'll just do that when I need it. You're welcome. But yeah, I will make more cards when I have the chance. I'm probably gonna tilt her neck more. But yeah, like for that one comic that I was doing for the contest, Unguard. Let me at least grab one of them. Packs. Here was one of the cards being used for that. So yeah, like this is its own archetype. So yeah. And granted, like every card game is gonna have something broken, but I would at least want it to be like still playable between two people instead of just watching one person prevent the other player from playing. And if something becomes truly broken, then sure, I'll like, you know, ban it. And then make a weaker, like not necessarily weaker in the sense of like, oh, it doesn't have the same effect. Like I will make the same card that was broken and just add in stuff that would make it a little bit more balanced. So, like, for example, if a card says draw 3 cards, and that's just broken because you're drawing 3 cards, then I would put draw 3 cards and then end your turn, or draw 3 cards, lose half your points, because in my game, your points are very, very necessary to play your cards, or else, you know, you won't be able to defend yourself. And the problem is, like, when you do use your points to, you know, play with your cards, it also puts you in a weakened state, so you want to be careful with how many points you spend. So yeah, like, maybe I can balance it out that way, where it's like the card, draw 3 cards, but the card costs you like 25 points to play, and you only start off with 100. Thank you. Yeah, I try to simplify a lot of things after a certain point, because at first I was adding in like symbols and stuff like that, and then after a certain point I was just like, I just need to make it, you know, basic, but at least have some presentation. And then I mostly wanted to focus on the artwork. But yeah, the idea is that the cards can be as broken as they want, but there's like a balance with the point system. And you have to be weary. Because there's like a card in the game where it deals 5 damage to your opponent. That's all it does. But it costs you 3 points just to play it. But and the whole point of that card is if your opponent is spending their points all willy-nilly, then you have that one card that'll punish them for it. So like they could come up with like a giant defense, like, okay, here's this big old defense. I spent a good chunk of points. I only have like 3 left, but I have this like impossible board where, you know, they can't get through, or I'm gonna destroy whatever character they play, or blah 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 blah. You play that card that deals 5 damage, and that completely ruins them because they got greedy. That's all that card does. And it's such a simple, basic card. Yeah, because the biggest problem is that back then, there was at least some balance with some of the cards where if you had like a powerful effect, there was something else about the card that balanced it out. So like, for example, Summon Skull has the same exact points as Dark Magician, but has 1200 defense. So, you know, cards like Level Limit would, you know, switch them to defense position, and then you just have like a high level 3, or like a level 3 monster with decent attack be able to destroy Summon Skull. So you had that kind of play. Nowadays, you see your opponent do like so many ridiculous effects that benefit them, and it's like, where's the downside? Like, where's the balance to it? And a lot of the time it's like, oh, you can only play dark monsters, or you can only play Cyberse monsters, you can only play this archetype for the rest of the turn or something. And it's like, that's not even a punishment if that's the deck. It's like, oh no, I can only play dark monsters in a dark deck. Oh wow, that is such a punishment. It makes no sense to have something like that as the punishment. Like, a punishment would be like, you can only play 2 cards during the turn you activate this effect, or after this card's effect, or something like that, or during the turn and after. So that way, it's like, during the turn you activate this card, anything after that you can only play 2 cards, and then that would be like some form of balance, or like a trade-off. But there's none of that in newer cards. And then card errata in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is really stupid, because they'll take iconic cards, completely strip them of what made them iconic, and then throw them back out in the wild, and then nobody wants to play them because they're essentially not the same card. They're a completely new card now. So if anything, they're better off just making a new card and keeping the old one banned. So, yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a lot of problems. And it basically just, at least for me, it just got to the point where I was just like, well, as much as I like Yu-Gi-Oh, I might as well just make my own game. And I'm just doing it for fun. It's like, yeah, I sell the cards, but again, that's just like a side thing. It's like if people are interested, they're interested, but I'm just making them to make them. Exactly. But at least it's like a balanced version of Pot of Greed. It's like, okay, here's a different version of the card. It didn't take Pot of Greed itself and give it the effects of Pot of Extravagance. That would just be stupid. It's like, no, Pot of Greed is its own card. Here's another card that does what Pot of Greed does, but with, you know, balance changes. Because that's the point. Yeah, like, and it definitely just boils down to the mindset of, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Or if there's something you want to see and nobody else is doing it, then do it yourself. That's like the only surefire way of seeing what you want to see, is just do it yourself. Even if you gotta start small, just do it yourself. So, like, for example, you know, if there's like some weight gain comic or kink comic or storyline that you're interested in and nobody else is making it, then make it yourself. Even if your artwork isn't perfect and you're not good at writing, who cares? Just make what you want to make. I find and then there's like a slight irony, because like there was a point in time where Yu-Gi-Oh did try to balance things off with the whole special summoning so many monsters from the extra deck, and that was when they made the rule of you requiring a link monster in order to special summon more extra monsters. And if you did special summon an extra monster that wasn't a link monster, then it just goes to the extra zone, and then that's it. Like, you have to wait for that monster to leave before you can play more. And they did that for a very short amount of time, and players got mad. And so they reverted the changes. So now it's like, well, they did try to balance the game at least in some way, and everybody got mad. So now they can't complain when the game's not balanced, because they wanted it that way. Or at the very least, a very loud minority wanted it that way, and then that's what ended up happening. But if, you know, major players complain, like, you know, if they have like a bunch of YouTube videos about it and stuff like that, then that's its own discussion. But yeah, it's like one of the few times Yu-Gi-Oh tried to balance the game, and everybody got mad. Yeah, because originally pendulum monsters were supposed to have different numbers on each side of their pendulum counters, and that was the whole point. The whole point was, depending on which position you put them in, whether it be left or right, they would have a different number. And for whatever fucking reason, they just dropped that idea, and so pendulum monsters just have an arbitrary number on them. It's just like, oh, you could literally save space by just removing one of the arrows and just have like a blue and red diamond and just put the number on it. Because the original idea never came into play. And so they just, you know, it doesn't matter where you put them because it's the same number. But that was like the original way of balancing pendulum monsters, was by forcing you to decide which number you were going to use. Yeah, because like there was like early images of the cards where they had two different numbers. So like one would be like a 7 and the other one would be like a 3, and you had to decide which direction you were going to put it on. It's like, oh, I'm going to put it on the blue side, so it's a 7, or no, I'm going to put it on the red side, so it's a 3. And it would depend on whatever strategy you were going to go for. And then they dropped the idea, and now they just have two numbers that say the same exact thing, and they're just wasting space on the card at that point. So yeah, like I don't know why they did that. It's kind of funny because Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel kind of rebalances the game by making it so that a lot of effects send cards to the graveyard, and they don't usually trigger. And then if they do have other effects, you have to send cards from your graveyard to the bottom of your deck, or just into your deck in general. So like, there's like a lot of rebalancing with that. Of course, it has the mechanic of normal summon as many monsters as you want, them sort of thing. But in terms of like powerful effects, it's interesting that they rebalance it that way. a good majority of Go Rush is filler because it's more of a kids comedy than Yu-Gi-Oh itself, because a lot of stuff just kind of happens in that show. Like in Go Rush, the main character heavily relies on cheating the game than actually playing, because every time he's in like a very plot relevant position, some Deus Ex Machina scenario happens. Like when he uses his and his friends' ID cards in order to make new cards for the game mid match. So he essentially doesn't have actual Yu-Gi-Oh cards in his deck when he starts playing an important duel. So he's like essentially cheating at that point. And then there's like a episode where basically a meteor falls from the sky during mid duel, and the meteor shoots out a card, and the card just happens to fly into his deck, into the top of his deck, and it's considered an act of God moment. And I'm just like, is this all that the main character is going to do? He's just going to keep relying on outside forces in order to help him win? And then with Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, or no, Sevens is the one with the meteor and all that. Go Rush is the one with the alien stuff. That one, like, a lot of it is just like comedy until like a bit towards the end, and even then it started to make less and less sense, because it's like, okay, so Otis is this person from the future / past, but then they like retcon all of that and just make it like its own weird shenanigans stuff, and it like no longer makes sense. And then they like say that, oh, there's Otis's from other timelines and stuff like that in the end, because like they have like this giant like time war on like the very last episode, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so we just kind of dropped the plot and just cut the story entirely. Jeez, these a little too big. Yeah, like Sevens and Go Rush are basically just like fanfic nonsense. Because like I will say personally that Sevens is better than Go Rush in terms of story, but I did like Go Rush in terms of some of the characters, because like the female protagonist, she's like probably the smartest fucking character in the whole damn show, but she gets overshadowed like heavily by the other two protagonists. Because every time she's dueled, she's been super competent in what she's doing, but she gets the least amount of screen time. Even when they made an arc focusing on her, she still didn't really get to do anything. And even when she did have like a plan and like a goal and everything, it ends up getting taken away from her and given to one of the main characters, to the other protagonists. So I was like, damn, we have 3 protagonists, but only 2 of them get the most screen time because the other one's a female character, basically. And this is a cartoon for boys for the most part. Like, obviously girls can still watch Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff like that, but let's be honest here. Exactly. Well, Arc 5 had its own problems too, not only because of production issues, but because they just completely dropped the plot. Because, like, if you go back to, like, episode 12, I think it was, where they first introduced Akaba Reggie, and he's showing that he can perform basically all of the summoning methods with the exception of Ritual, because for some fucking reason they didn't want to focus on Ritual. even though you have two characters in the show that have ritual decks. But there's a moment where Sora is like, "Wait, is that the real?" And then he doesn't finish his sentence, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Is he gonna go into saying that this Akaba Reggie is from another dimension?" Which he essentially was, but they didn't do anything with it. Like, they set up the idea and didn't capitalize on it. And then they just started losing more and more of their plot. Especially when it became like when it came down to Zark, that part was messed up because it's like, okay, cool, all the different versions of Yuya are fusing together to create Zark. And not only did we not get the original Zark, but all we got was just some monster version of Yuya, which was already just going off of the monster versions of Merrick and other characters that have done the same exact idea. And it just amounted to nothing. It's like, damn, we had all this setup and did nothing with it. We spent hundreds of episodes to do nothing. And I was like, why did you even bother saying there were different versions of one guy if you're not even going to show the guy? Instead we just get another Merrick scenario where it's like, oh, I fuse myself with my monster. And it's like we haven't seen that 3 other times. Yeah, Arc 5 had a really good start until, like, I want to say it started falling apart probably when they got to the Synchro era. And, like, it wasn't all bad at that point, but that was, like, when it started to show that there was going to be problems. Because even when they went to the Exceed era, I think it was, with the Thompson sisters. The Thompson sisters were really cool. They were set up to be really interesting female villains, and then they just get immediately dropped. They amounted to, like, what, 4 episodes, maybe 5, and then that was it. Like, they showed up, were you know, balls out of evil, and then after their initial episode, the next 2 duels was just, okay, we kicked these 2 guys' asses, and then, oh, we're fighting the main character and we lose, and then we're just not going to try anymore. And it's like, oh, it's all about friendship. Even though we went around several dimensions, conquering them and turning people into cards and blah 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 blah. Nope. This one duel is going to tell us to not do that anymore. Even though they had no real indication that they were going to change, but there we go. But yeah, they spent all that time setting up those characters, and then again amounted to nothing. And then the ending was just horrible. Yeah, Crow in general is just a horrible character. Yeah, because for some fucking reason, Crow somehow ended up being like one of the most popular characters in 5Ds, and basically ended up taking the spot of Rua, because Rua was supposed to be the 5th dragon, and instead they gave that to Crow, and then they later on gave Rua a dragon part just because, but Roa got shafted so hard in that story. Is there Lua or one of the two? 5Ds. I mean, Lua, because the English name for that one is Leo. So yeah, Lua got shafted hard. But yeah, like there was just so much focus on Crow, and he just kind of shows up. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's Crow. He's our other friend," and it's like, "Man, you guys sure picked your time talking about the guy." Came out of fucking nowhere. And then Blackwing's in of itself is a busted ass archetype. Honestly, to me, the best episode in 5Ds was the tournament against Tyro, the Team Tyro. When they're trying to summon Jashin the sleeping giant, that was the best episode because it showed them using a bunch of old school cards, how to make the best of them versus like more modernized cards at the time, and they basically stopped Team 5D's Ace monsters, and literally the only thing that screwed that team was using or was getting rid of Dragon Capture Jar. I have no idea why they decided to get rid of that. There was no reason for them to get rid of that other than trying to deal damage. But they didn't have to do that. They could have just destroyed the monster and then did whatever they wanted after the fact because their monster was essentially a god card. And if they had just kept Dragon Capture Jar in play, then none of the other Ace monsters could do anything about it. Because all of Team 5D's Ace monsters are dragons. So yeah, I have no idea why they thought that was a... Well, obviously because of plot. They're, the good guys have to win. Well, the main characters have to win. But I'm just saying in terms of like what would you actually do in that scenario, there's no reason to destroy that card. To me, 5Ds was pretty much good up until the Nordic gods, honestly. I just had no interest in those. The tournament stuff was pretty good, but what they did with Lua was just really messed up. Because it's like we set up this main character, and then they get overshafted by another character who just kind of comes out of nowhere, had no setup. I guess he was popular for some unknown reason, and then they spent all their other resources on that character, completely taking up Lua's spot as the fifth dragon. And then Lua only gets it like towards the end of the series, or gets a dragon piece. Listen, yeah. Arc 5 kind of went through some of it to let people know, like, oh yeah, remember Crow or whoever else. I thought it was odd that they didn't show the main characters from each universe. If they're gonna journey to them, they just showed the side characters. There's always a possibility that those characters just don't exist in that world, since all the characters are in a different place in life. But it was just interesting that they didn't do it, or that they didn't show anything. Yeah. And then I also thought it was weird that they had Dennis have his antique gear cards in his deck when he was supposed to be not trying to get caught. It's like, because even when was it show or not show? It was Sora versus what was his name in Japanese? Shun. There we go. Because even though Shun was going through all these lengths to like give him fusion or to give him polymerization and all that, it's like that shouldn't matter if he doesn't have those cards in his deck to begin with. But for some reason, they just made him have them because of plot. It's like, well, that's stupid. If you're trying to be incognito, why would you have the cards that would, you know, rat you out in your deck? And he was already shown to be a fairly competent character, so it just made no sense why they would be there. But at that point, I'm just nitpicking because, obviously, whoever's writing it, they're going to make whatever happen. Yeah, exactly. It's like if I want to see something the way I want to see it, then I'm better off just making it myself. So one day I'll have my own fully card game comic or card game anime or whatever, and show all the stuff that the other cartoons aren't willing to show or used to show and started self-censoring themselves just because they're trying to capitalize on kids, because ultimately that seems to be the goal of every show. Is like, oh, we need more money and kids get us money technically, I guess, even though it's their parents, not the kids themselves, and then go from there. It's like, you guys know you can have a competent story without having to make it shitty. But whatever. So if I ever make a card game anime, I'll have some character with big titties and, I don't know, 90s style 90s style expectations. Doo-doo-doo. Okay, got all that. Now I'm just focusing on making her feathers more unkempt. I find it funny though that Kaiba is essentially the only character, at least in most of Yu-Gi-Oh, to not try to cheat. Or just simply trying to play the game without bullshit going on in his storyline. Like, sure, he was willing to kill himself during that duel with Yugi, but that's not cheating. He was just like, look, if I lose, I'm killing myself. Because the whole point of that plot was he had to win or else he couldn't, save Mokuba. So he was just making his statements clear. It's like, look, if I lose, I die. I'm willing to bet my life on that. And Atem was willing to kill him. That's the interesting part. Yu-Gi-Oh! Chat, okay. For the most part, yeah. Like I always find it interesting when fans make their own versions of like Pokemon, but they still use the word Pokemon, and then they get cease and desist. And I'm like, well, what were you guys expecting? You guys were using the word Pokemon and trying to make everything take place in the world of Pokemon. Of course, you're gonna get shut down by Nintendo or whoever stops them. It's like you're better off just making your own shit. Like they could, and they spent like years making this stuff. So there had to be a point in time where they thought about it, where it's like, let's just make our own thing. And sure, it can be spiritually based on whatever it is they're making it off of, but using the name of it was definitely not the smartest thing to do. Of course, right now, even with that said, Nintendo going after Power World, it's like, okay, so somebody did make their own IP, and Nintendo got mad because they became successful, and so they're trying to sue them for it. And Nintendo is just, pieces of shit for that. It was just kind of like... And then Nintendo trying to claim that, oh, it's the same thing as our game. It's like, bitch, there are so many games that do the exact same fucking thing that you didn't say jack shit about. Or even copyright or whatever, or patent. Copyright and patent for video games are so fucking stupid. They just hinder progress. Especially when it comes to patents, because... like with the situation with WB, where it's like, nobody can make anything like the Nemesis system, even though we only used it for this one fucking game, and and we shut down the company that made it, so we have zero fucking plans of using this mechanic. But yeah, fuck you to everybody else. Like, patents should just have a straight up hard expiration. It's like you get a year. Like, there's no reason for you to need more than a year. Like, you get your initial burst of sales, and then after a year you're done. And then anybody can use the idea in their own way. and then we get a bunch of cool games that expand on the idea. Like, that's it. Like, the bullshit that companies do with these things is just stupid. Like, all they're doing is just collecting patents, so that way, if somebody comes up with a similar idea, they can just knock on their door and get money. Or say, like, oh, you can't use that idea unless you pay me. Well, the funny part is that Nintendo didn't even patent that stuff until after Power World was coming out with it, or showed it off in trailers and stuff. So Nintendo, in their vast wealth of wisdom, didn't even think to copyright or to patent their shit. Because I know copyright functions differently than a patent, but still, it's like they didn't even think to fucking do that shit. And then have the audacity to be like, oh, they're copying us. Which is funny because Power World can point to older games, as well as some games that Nintendo made themselves that still didn't get patented at the time. And going like, no, here's all these other examples, Nintendo didn't do shit. And the irony is that Nintendo is willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for this lawsuit thing, rather than make a better Pokemon game. They would rather do that than make a better Pokemon game. That is the irony of it all. Like, fans have been telling them for years what they wanted from a Pokemon game, and rather than make that game, they would rather spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a fucking lawsuit. Hello. Oh yeah, I should probably draw her tail. That would be a smart thing to do. And it's funny because with Pokemon ZA coming out, that's like one of good examples of, hey, here's an idea we actually like, where Pokemon have like actual range for their attacks, and they can dodge. It's like, well, damn. I guess this is what happens when you get your asses beat by fucking Power World. That it actually makes you creative for once. Now, if we can just make the rest of the game the way Power World made theirs, and then we're set. Like, Pokemon could have probably went super far if they just made a fucking MMO. Just make an MMO, make several regions, and make it so that whenever you start the game, the region you start off in is randomized. So that way everybody comes from a different place. And then you just journey to the other regions after beating your own region. It's like, oh, you beat Kento or Kanto. Now you can go to Hoenn, or now you can go to Johto, and you just have a giant map that you can travel around. Like, I don't understand why they haven't even done that. No. What I should say is I understand why they didn't do it. They're just stupid for doing it the way that they're doing it. No, that's not fair to say. It's obviously smart, because it's like, oh, well, we'll just break it all into pieces and then make money individually. So obviously that's the smart play. But if you just want a giant fan or player base, just make an MMO. Just make a gigantic Pokemon-based MMO. Everybody starts off in a different region. Catch them all. Done. And because it's an MMO, they have full control over whatever the fuck happens, so people have less chances of, hacking and other stuff. They can run online tournaments. They can do whatever. Like it's you know, almost foolproof. I do like fan games, but my name is made after. Oh, okay. Yeah, because they're trying to make Pokemon into like different types of games, the way like Legends is, and like Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet are. And all they would have to do is make a giant MMO Pokemon game the way that people want to play Pokemon, and then make the other games side stuff. That's it. That's all you have to do. It's not hard, and because it's kind of like what Pokemon Champions or whatever the hell it's called is coming out pretty soon, where it's supposed to be, at least seemingly, the battle aspect that major fans of Pokemon want from the series. But they could have did that a long ass time ago by making like an MMO and make that the major focus of like Pokemon fans, of catching a Pokemon, raising them for tournaments, EV training, IV training, whatever you gotta do, and then have stuff like Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet, Legends, have those be their own sanctioned off Pokemon games, so that way it's like, okay, obviously you can't catch them all in these games because they're more region focused or story focused or whatever the case may be, and then you're done. Like, it's really fucking simple. You could easily still make money off of that because it's like, okay, here's this storyline, and then if you want to spice it up, you could say, oh, when you beat the game, you can transfer those Pokemon to the MMO. There. Just don't have like exclusive. Well, I mean, you could probably get away with making exclusive Pokemon that show up in those games and then transfer them to the MMO. You could probably get away with that because that will still make players buy those games to get those Pokemon. Although that would be seen as like pay to win to some extent, where it's like, oh, you have to have access to this game to get this super powerful Pokemon, or assuming it's powerful. Like, you might have that issue, but still, it's like there's plenty of ideas to make that work. So that's just my thoughts on the matter. I'm likely overthinking a lot of things and just rambling, but that's how I would handle it. So if somehow I knew how to make an online MMO Pokemon-like game or whatever, then I'll do that. It'll just be furry based or whatever the hell. It's like, oh, you want your big titty fat chicken woman? Here you go. You gotta go catch her. I don't know how, but we'll figure that out when we get there. I don't know, I'm just talking. Hello, hello. Yes, I'm making Withered Chica. Having a fun time with this, actually. I like the whole zombie look. Trying to draw more fan art, so I'll probably like dive in the Pokemon and other stuff later down the line. Draw whomever I like. Alright. Think we're good on this. So let me just grab her colors. No. Because of the way that I drew her in my other renditions, I'm kind of sticking with that. Yeah, she's still like a animatronic, but I didn't want to show like the underteeth thing. It just didn't seem to work in my mind. Like, I probably could. Like, let me see. Let me just dance around it for a moment. So, like, for example, if I really wanted to make it all trippy, let me make a second version. That way I can delete one. Like if I wanted to make it look like it was like something inside, I can do it this way. Because I did give her like sharp teeth when she's more like freaking out in other versions. So if I wanted to, I could do it this way. Have like a weird set of teeth inside. Let's make it like eerie. I could do it like that. Cut these out a little bit. So yeah, like I can go with this if this seems to gel with you guys more. Frails you with noodle hands. Maybe make these a little bit smaller. So yeah, for basing it off of the other versions of Chica that I've drawn, then she would have these sharp teeth. And then like, if I'm gonna make it like creepier, I could have like her tongue like right here. Be kind of hidden to a degree. It's a little hard because of where everything's positioned. So like if her tongue went like over here, and just draw like a bit of her tongue going down that way. So something like that. Maybe try to separate the tongue and the teeth just a little bit. So that way they're not in the way of each other so much. And then just add some shadow. So yeah, like I can go with something like this, where it's clear that there's something inside. And I can add a little bit more teeth on this side. So yeah, I can go with that. Basically be the closest we're gonna get to having second teeth inside. And then if we really want to make it look a little bit more natural, we can do this. The teeth are not as next to each other. A little bit more separated, so that way it's a little bit more creepy. So yeah, we could do something like that. Because like this way we can infer that okay, Chica normally would have teeth because well, at least the version that I made is designed to eat pizza, so she would have some form of teeth, and I would have like the sharp ones just because I like drawing characters with sharp teeth. But then the secondary teeth underneath could be her actual endoskeleton that you wouldn't normally see, but because she's in this destroyed state, that you're seeing something that you would normally see off of her. And the original Withered Chica has like very huge eyelids, so we can have like some of her eyelids kind of broken up to kind of show that off. So I'll break one of her eyelids, so that way all we're having is mechanical parts underneath. So she still has like the eyelashes, but she doesn't have the lid itself. We'll just have like wires coming off. And even though she has feathers, I'm just gonna draw a crack. She could be like short-haired. So yeah, show a little bit of the machinery underneath and then just darken it. Making up designs is fine as long as it doesn't go further than that. Because obviously if people try to start selling it, then that's a whole other discussion. But just making them for fun, that's perfectly fine. And just, you know, credit where they're from, so that way people know what they're based on. But yeah, other than that, I'm perfectly fine with that. Okay, so now I believe Chica's done. We can move on. So grab that because I'm going to need it. If they were to reuse Withered Chica, I think they should do a similar idea that they did to Shattered Glamrock Chica. because I like the whole creepiness that they went with her. Like after you destroy her in the trash compactor, she makes like a bunch of glitchy noises from afar at first. Like you don't even see her before she shows up, and all you hear is like weird static noises and glitchy squeaks and high pitched noises, and then you run into Shattered Chica, and that was just such a good setup for that character that it's a shame that it doesn't get used on anybody else. Ooh, that hurt. Hope you're alright. And like the closest character that could have had the same treatment as Shattered Chica is Shattered Glamrock Freddy, where he gets corrupted and broken and he looks all disturbing, and they have those lines of him being super creepy. Like that was such a good setup, and they didn't use it. Like it's in the game files, and they didn't use it. I was like, what the hell is wrong with you people? How do you have such a good setup for several characters and drop the ball so hard? Because the same thing happened with Vanny. They'd set up everything with Vanny and then drop the ball hard on her too. I'm like, you guys are just allergic to creativity or some shit. I don't know what the fuck was wrong with you guys. You had all the opportunity. I don't know, I just get really invested in things and certain series that I end up liking or whatever, because it's like I can see the potential so easily, and like everybody else could see it too. It's like, oh, this is gonna be good, this is gonna be good, because they're setting all this up, and then the people just drop it or somehow go in such a random direction with whatever it was they were going to do, and everybody else is just baffled at that point. It's like, how did we even get here? Hey, he's good. Yeah, I've seen some of those animations with Withered Chica. But the way they did Shattered Chica was really, really, really good. And just so there's not so much empty space, let's put Withered Chica on the screen, just so we have a slight comparison with what I'm working with. There we go. Can also take that off the screen. I don't think I need it anymore. Or what am I doing? Keep forgetting I can just do this. I find it funny when people were still trying to figure out what was the static that Mangle was saying. And I was like, Mangle isn't saying anything, it's just a random sound effect off the internet. Because a long time ago I had found the original sound effect for Mangle, and all it is just truck driver radio discussion, but it's just like so staticky because it's like coming in and out. And the exact conversation comes up that Mangle uses, and it gets like really warped. And at a certain point, I could no longer find it because wherever I last saw him, it just like wasn't there anymore. So it was really hard to like explain that to people. Where it's it's not a hidden message; it's just random sound effect. This was like in the early days though. That was like when FNAF 2 like had barely released. I might try to make like a destroyed building of some sort. Honestly, with the Withered's cases, they should have been like in like some kind of storage area, which was probably what the back room was in FNAF 2 to begin with. But I mean, like it'd be more creepy if they had their own game, and it just took place in like a storage, like a large store warehouse, and you just have like the Withered's wandering around in there. And Chica is like, I think Chica Shack a little bit more, or Withered Chica Shack like a weeping angel, where if you don't look at her long enough, she'll start following you and gets faster and faster the longer you're not looking at her. And then you can give like other mechanics to the other characters. But she's like just very imposing due to her T-pose. Her dominating. You can move this Chica over to this side. Really? Bland and gray? I had never heard of anybody saying anything about the environment. I think it was interesting because a lot of it's just dusty because it wasn't in use. And like the time that the security guard are there for, the messages are old recordings. Like whatever was taking place had long since been over. Yeah, I can mess with that. Hold on. Could do something like this. Actually, let me just erase. Let me look at it without the color there. Hello. There. Now it looks like it's barely hanging on by a thread. Let's change up this a bit. Um, kinda like Subscribestar definitely is more open with when it comes to content. So like they're not particularly nitpicky about what you post and all that. Let me take a look in terms of the whole split. Let me just double check, make sure you guys can't see this. Nitpicky? No. Payouts. They definitely have a threshold where you have to make at least 150 in order to pay out, whereas with Patreon, I think it's any amount is fine, but you know you're still gonna lose a percentage based off of both PayPal or whatever services you use. Trying to see how much the percentage is. Might have to look for that later. But there are some features that Subscribestar doesn't have compared to Patreon. Like looking for content is a lot harder on Subscribestar, but if the creator or user has like links to all the other content, then it's definitely basically the same thing. I just made it in a way where both sites can get to the content the same way, so that way it's not a pain in the ass. Yeah, they were doing that for a good while. I don't know if they're still doing that now. I haven't heard anything about it for the past few years. But for like a good while, there was like a moment in time where they were like censoring certain types of content, even though it wasn't breaking any rules. And then they were trying to they're trying to say that themes like hypnotism is not consent or some shit like that, and I'm like, guys, these are drawings. They don't have any agency to begin with. What the fuck are you talking about? But yeah, they're trying to get like really weird about it, but I haven't heard anything for the last few years, so I don't know if they just kind of eased up on it or if there just hasn't been any incidences. But as far as I'm aware of, I don't think they're trying to do anything anymore, unless it's like something that needs their attention. But yeah, like that's why Slugbox left Patreon after a certain point because of all the censorship they were dealing with. And then another artist, I only know them as Seth, but they made their own like website to put their content on because Patreon was getting weird with the whole like furries versus feral design furries type of thing, and I was like, well, that's stupid. It's like clearly the character shows that she has her own intelligence. She's not just a pet or an animal or whatever. But apparently they were having issues with that for a time, so that's when they made their own website for that. True, there's meaning behind, there's meaning to a lot of art and stuff like that, but you can't treat them in the same way as like a real person, because at that point you're just having people getting the two confused, which unfortunately does happen way more than it should. Like they're trying to say like younger characters as a drawing is the same as a young person in real life. Like that's the issue I have. It's like no, it's not the same. Especially when it comes to diverting resources from helping like real life children who are in danger to I don't like this drawing, get it off the internet. Right, and then you'd have to figure out how to prove that intent. I'm just saying that if we're wasting resources on drawings, then there's a problem. Especially if those resources could be going to helping actual children. Or actual people in general. And then it's also the sense of like, no, I pretty much said what I wanted to say, but treating them like they're the same as their actual person. Thought there was more to add to it, but I was like, no, I pretty much said what I said. Do. It's not so much reducing the resources as more of just wasting that time and resources. It's like when you're using up all that kind of time just to go after drawings on the internet. And granted, not every drawing on the internet needs to be there, especially if there's like more malicious intent behind them, such as using them to lure in children or to confuse people that have mental disabilities and stuff like that. Like, of course, when things like that happen, then you need to take the steps that you need to take. But when it comes to like trying to equate them as the same thing in terms of like, oh, this is a drawing of, let's just say, 16-year-old person, that means that this drawing is a 16-year-old person, and we will treat it as if it is a 16-year-old person. It's like, no, that's not how that works. And I'm sure there's like a more deeper discussion of this, because obviously we would need like an actual scenario to discuss in order to have like better points to go through in detail. But I just feel that we should be able to express what we want to express, properly label them the way they should be. Like if it's mature and adult content, then obviously it should be labeled as such, and shouldn't be in the. It shouldn't be. It should not be easily accessed by children. Like I'm all for that. And then there it is. It's over and done with. Like, unless there's more to go into, I mean, I don't know what else to really say about it. Because if we're going by intent after a certain point, then it's like, okay, so if drawing a certain thing could possibly lead to someone's intentions of something bad, then the same can be said for somebody that reads a particular book or watches a particular movie. Like, you could argue the same thing for that to an extent. And of course, you still have to like go further down the rabbit hole and prove whatever you gotta prove, but you can make the same arguments. Yeah. Like, just take the proper steps and there you go. Anything after that is whatever the discussion leads to. But yeah, I'm just operating off of the same nonsense people would have, where it's like, oh, we shouldn't have Grand Theft Auto because this will incite people to commit crimes and shoot hookers. And I'm like, I don't know how you got to that. Or it's like, it's so realistic. I'm like, I guess if you immerse yourself that hard, I guess you could say that Grand Theft Auto's simulation of violence is rather real to a degree. But you know, when people are doing that, they're just talking bullshit. And granted, people have done violence seemingly based off of these actions, but at the same time, you know, whatever decisions they make, that is their own. No television show or game can convince you to do that. And then there's, you know, the side discussion of like people with mental illnesses and stuff like that. It's like, okay, what about them? And that's a whole other discussion on how that works. And even then, it's like, well, they need to be properly taken care of, or whatever the case may be. It's a case-by-case thing when it comes to scenarios like that. Because there have been people that take things that have nothing to do with violence and somehow do ridiculous things. But that's my stance on it. I'll just should be able to draw or create whatever you want. Properly, you know, label and lock them so that way they're not easily accessible to people that shouldn't be accessing them. And then as long as it doesn't harm people in real life, then I don't see any other issue with it. It's other fishy casual. Yeah, it's just a lot of things. It's a lot of stuff that goes on in this type of discussion, because it's not easily black and white of just this person reads or draws or watches X that equals Y. Like, it's not as simple as that. If it was that simple, then we'd probably have a lot of problems solved by now, if it was that easy. And oddly enough, there hasn't really been a precedent set to really solidify this scenario, because a lot of times cases that involve stuff like that don't go into completion, so we're only stuck with like a partial scenario. Well, because for the most part, it's all just, it depends on what's happening. Like, I can't. It's hard to really speak for like it all in general, because we don't know what exactly is being discussed. But ultimately, just label it properly. If we're just making things basic, just label things properly. Children should not be viewing it if they're not, you know, the appropriate age for it, or if, you know, their parent or guardian isn't supervising the content that they're viewing, and then go from there. Like, at least in my case, when it was like, when viewing like mature content, like, you know, violent cartoons or something like that, I had my parents there to supervise and explain things if necessary, and if I wasn't supposed to see something, they would tell me to look away or whatever the case may be. So obviously not everybody gets the same treatment, so it's a case-by-case thing. Okay, I know there's a lot of yellow going on in the wires. Most of that I'm gonna ignore, unless there's something like really annoying standing out. Okay, so need her tongue and her eyelids. Two. Looking good. Like seriously, I would not want to be walking around a warehouse and then suddenly come across this thing in the distance, standing like that, and just staring in my direction. I'll be like, oh hell no. Depending on where I was in the building, I would get the fuck out. I'll be like, nope. Like, it's bad enough that it's here in the first place, but the fact that it just shows up standing like that, staring in my direction, fuck that. I am out. I would get the hell out. They were like, why are you leaving? I was like, bitch. It's like, you knew what the fuck was in there, and you sent me in there. Fuck that. And then the sad realization that she's not the only one in there. That would just make things worse, knowing that she's not the only problem. I think the worst part about it is wondering how she'll kill you. Like, she has no hands. She does have her bizarre mouth, but like, in the game it kind of looks like her mouth is broken as well. So the real question is, how is she killing you? Like, do the wires come alive and strangle you, or does she like force her broken mouth over your face or some shit? Like, there's too many questions when it comes to this character. And all of them point to hell no. Death by thighs or foot. Or foot. Something. I don't know, because like assuming she's damaged, that means she's gonna be moving in like some bizarre way. Assuming you even see her move at all. Which personally, I would not want to see her move in order to be scary. I would just like all she has to do to be scary is literally just stand there. That's all Withered Chica needs. And that makes her horrifying, especially when she's stuck in the T-pose. That just makes it more horrifying. And like to see that in like a dark room or something, like I could show for example. So like you see her like this, and then let me just switch these colors. Like you see her in like a warehouse, and you're just like roaming around trying to find where it is the fuck you came for, and then you just see this, like very darkened in like the far distance, and like say like the background is like just dark, like you know, like a warehouse would be, like there's hardly any lights and all that, and you just see this, like you can basically make out what you're looking at. Like you can see like, you know, the bottom half and all that. You can see her face, but it's so like darkened by shadows, or by the shadow of the building, that you know that she's staring in your direction, just barely, and you're just like, no. You're like, no, fuck that. Like I would not want to like turn a corner and see that, or I'm rummaging through something, I hear something behind me, I turn around and I just see her like far, like not even like super close to me, but just like far down the building, like say you're at the back of the building and she's like either a tenth or even at like the front door type of thing, and you just see her like that. I would be like, fuck that. Boot to the chest. Let's hope kicking her in the chest actually does something. Let's hope that she's not like so fucking heavy that kicking her isn't gonna do shit, or like her coming close is a problem. Like let's just hope that you even have the ability to kick her. But yeah, that's just a scenario I would not want to be in. I'd be like, no. Well, in the game, it is implied that she can move because you can see her crawling through the vent. It's more eerie when you see her stand in one of the cameras just standing by a wall in the T-pose, and then later on you see her in your office. But when she's in the vent, her arms are moved, so it's implied that she can at least move her arms, which I think honestly takes away from the spookiness of the character. But at least in the scenario that I'm trying to propose, it's like not seeing her move at all is much more terrifying. And if she's just perpetually stuck in that pose, or at least we assume she's stuck in that pose, like having no knowledge of whether or not she can actually move makes her more scary. And again, if I were to see her like in like a fall off hallway, just standing like that, staring in my direction, I'd be like, oh hell no! I don't know what I'd have to do to get out of that building. Like, let's just assume that she's in front of the exit. I will find a goddamn window and break through it. I might get cut up. I might hurt myself, especially if I'm like on like a second story building, third story building, or however high I'm at. Probably gonna hurt like hell. But fuck that. I'm gonna hobble my ass into my car and drive away, and I'm gonna look in my fucking rearview mirror and pray to God she's not sitting in the back of my seat, and then I'm gonna pray to God she's not like in the street or like out near the door of the building staring at me as I drive away. I'm gonna pray for all of those scenarios to not happen. Like on it, I know having the character show up right in front of me would definitely be terrifying, I think like in terms of like a scary game or something like that, I think having the character just immediately show up right in front of you kind of takes away from her a little bit. Yeah, like you're definitely gonna get the jump scare, but I think it's more creepy if she's further away from you, because that implies that she's been following you. Her showing up just feels more like the sudden spook factor, which is the case in like some of the FNAF games, like when you look through the cameras and the character is like right there type of thing. But I think it's scarier in her case where you have zero clue how she's moving around, if she's even able to move, and she's just like far away but looking in your direction. Because to me, that just implies that she's following me around, and that's more scary than her being right up on me. Yeah, like I would say if there was a moment where she would be right up in front of me, it would be like after I'm already trying to avoid her type of thing. It's like okay, she's there. I'm leaving. I'm going away. I'm like turning corners. I can kind of notice that she keeps popping up in certain spots looking in my direction. I try to leave or whatever. I try to find something. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm right there. Then I slightly think I assume I hear something. Like I can't even confirm whether or not I actually heard something behind me. I just think because I'm becoming paranoid. And then I look, and she's like right there in front of me. And then it's a matter of I'm like literally next to the exit, but she's like right there. What's gonna happen? That would fuck with me too. And you know what? It'd probably be even scarier if she does nothing. It's probably even scarier because then you don't even know what the fuck all that was about. Yeah, kind of like SCP-1471, where all it does is observe you after a certain point because it's been following you, and then it just shows up in your peripheral vision or however it manifests. That's creepy because you have no idea what's coming after that. You don't know if it's a entity that just doesn't harm you in general, or if it's just biding its time until something specific happens. And like in Withered Chica's case, what could be worse is if her watching you just informs the others, like as if she's like a surveillance. That's even worse, because that implies that she doesn't have to do shit to you. Just her presence is enough to be a problem. And then just to make matters worse is when you know she's there and you turn and then she's not there. And then you're like, well, shit, where did she go? It's like, where did she go and why? And I think that's like the best setup for a character like this is just too many unknowns. See, that's why I miss the whole ghost aspect of the animatronic of FNAF, because a lot of that can just make this terrifying. I haven't drawn Foxy in a long time. I drew him like once. That was a long time ago. I think that was when FNAF 1 first came out. When I drew him. Alright, you take care. Have a good night. Thank you. I would definitely give Withered Chica like the unused soundtrack music from Mother 3, just to like make it more clear that she's a creepy character. Alright, you take care, have a good day. I'm gonna be stopping in about 30 minutes anyway. Thank you. Yeah, if I were to ever design like my own type of FNAF like characters or series or something, I would just try to hammer more into like the horror aspect rather than trying to overly explain everything. Like if I wanted to say that, like hypothetically, if every FNAF character was different, like Chica is different from Withered Chica, who is different from Toy Chica and Glamrock Chica, like if they're all like their own personal characters and not like one entity constantly haunting all of them or something, then you could easily go down to like somebody really sick or whatever just forcing the dead souls of like random people into these things, and like their bodies inside these animatronics are just having like an awful reaction. So like with Withered Chica, it's even more horrifying, where it's somebody who is probably in like terrible pain but cannot move, cannot speak, cannot scream, and is just constantly following you around and looking in your direction in like the far distance. And whether or not that benefits the other animatronics is completely like up to like gameplay or whatever lore you want to add. But just knowing that there's like some kind of tortured person potentially in this body, and all it can do is look at you with this deranged look on its face, it's like, Jesus. How do you think you tackle the ignited animatronics from the Joy of Creation? Uh, I don't know. I don't know much about Joy of Creation, so I'd probably have to familiarize myself with the games first, and then see how they act and all that, and then go off of that. Because sometimes I like to draw characters the way they were intended, and then other times I have my own interpretation if I feel that the other version is a bit weak or had like potential that didn't really go anywhere, sort of thing. So it kind of just depends. Or, if I'm just going to do something for fun, then I'll do that too. But it just depends on what I'm looking for with the characters. But yeah, I'd have to check that out first before I planned anything. Because that's usually what I do when I'm drawing a character that I'm not familiar with. I try to look up the character, read up on what the character is like. Sometimes I'll watch like a short video of the character just so I can get like a feel for their personality, and then go from there. Yeah, I'd have to see them to see how they act. Because sometimes I feel when people make the animatronics a little bit too aggressive, it kind of takes away from them to a degree. But it heavily depends on the situation. I'd have to look at it. Like I've had other ideas of like my own version of Chica. Like if I were like to do like a from the ground up redesign of Chica that doesn't look like it's close to the original source. I've thought of like monster designs that could work, but like more in like a haunting captivity sort of thing, where it's like the animatronics are caged up because they're built in a bizarre fashion that's unorthodox. And so whoever's in charge of like making the animatronics keeps them in cages because they're just like dysfunctional or unstable. And at some point, like something goes wrong in the facility, and all of them, and all like, we'll just say five, just for the sake of consistency. All five of them escape. And if I were to make a game that way, I would make it so that all five of them escape. You know there is five, but you only encounter four for like the normal route of the game. I would just make that the case, and then the fifth one would either be like a secret boss mission type of thing where you go to an area you wouldn't normally go to get like whatever specific item that gives you like the extra mission and stuff like that, and that's when you encounter like Golden Freddy, and Golden Freddy's like some bizarre amalgamation of of experimentation of the other four or something horrifying, something to make you go like, oh hell no, type of mentality. Make you go like, nope, I was better off not coming in here. Nope, no, none of this. And then possibly put you in like some game state that you are not familiar with because none of the other animatronics put you in that scenario. So you have to like learn something completely new. Yeah, I've seen that version. I think it's cute. I like how she's like just jamming on her rollerblades or roller skates. If I were to draw my version of the first Chica, I'd probably lean her more into like a toon type of personality, where like if she were to be thrown into the game as like a more cartoony version, it would be like she's laughing as she's chasing you around, but it's in more like a goofy Looney Tune-ish type of giggle, and just make it frightening. Like the power goes out and you can just hear her chuckling and laughing as she's skating around looking for you, and you're like hiding under the tables or something, trying to not make too much noise. And meanwhile, you have those fucking cupcakes like scattered all over the place, becoming the obstacle where it's like you're trying not to interact with them so that way they don't alert Chica. And meanwhile, you're just hearing Chica making like these goofy noises and maybe a few catchphrases here and there, and that just makes it more terrifying. Yeah, because especially if you keep the character the way they're supposed to be intended, but they're trying to kill you, that just makes it more terrifying. Because it's like she's saying like all these happy phrases and stuff like that, but they do not line up with what she's actually doing. It's almost like the Glamrock animatronics, only that the Glamrocks have information they shouldn't be having, like your name and stuff like that, unless Vanessa told them. But even then, it I think it's because they're operated by AI. They're able to say phrases that are new to them. But if they were only kept to say like pre-programmed phrases, and then only use that for as a type of communication, then that's just more horrifying. So it'll be like Chica running around, giggling and laughing, saying like, "Wait up! I made a cupcake for you" or something. And then she's going to murder you by shoving that cupcake down your throat, breaking your jaw, or whatever the hell she's doing. Or like the cupcake is oversized because it's just the mechanical cupcake that she always holds, some type of thing or something. If it's like that kind of mentality, then that just makes it more scary. Because everything she's saying does not line up with what she's doing. Yeah. But that's if we're going off of like Chica being her own entity and not like being just the mimic wearing a costume type of thing. If we're going off of her just actually having her own personality and character, then yeah, like that would be even creepier if she herself doesn't see that she's causing problems in reality, because by her perspective it's just running around with a cupcake to give to you, but in reality her actions don't reflect that because of whatever the plot is about, like whether she's possessed by a spirit or some programming error or something. Then that just makes her more terrifying, that what she thinks she's doing does not line up with what she's doing in reality. Or even worse is where, like, say the power went out or something, and you're like crawling around and you see like a place to hide, and you crawl in and you realize that you crawled into an oven, and then you just have Chica skate up by and close the oven and says, "Remember to preheat your oven when getting ready to make cupcakes," and she turns it on. I'll be like, "Oh, fuck that." Okay, I think we're almost good. Just gotta do her nails. So yeah, I could totally see like a really, really, really horror version of that. And a similar scenario happens in Black Butler, where this guy was trying to shark the main character out of money, and basically he gets like in this weird hallucination where the lights go off and he's having a hard time. He thinks he's being stalked, and he's like running around trying to hide, and he ends up hiding in the oven. And he realizes this when he's like, "When am I crawling in?" And he like licks his finger, and it's just like frosting, and because like a cake was being made. And so the one of the main characters, Sebastian, he turns on the oven and cooks the guy in there. The guy manages to escape, but he's like severely burned, and I think he dies shortly after. But still, yeah, that's even worse. If like she can't register if someone's alive or dead, she just recognizes that she sees a human, and she just gives them the cupcakes regardless. Okay, I think we're good now. But yeah, having Chica in like a toon state doing that would definitely be horrifying. And the same could be said for any of the other characters as well. Like if they were more designed to act the way they should normally, but obviously being used in a murderous way, that would just make all of the characters more terrifying. So like Bonnie would be playing his guitar on stage, trying to gain attention of whoever their target is. And then when they get too close, you can see Bonnie just take his guitar and just cram it down their throat or something, or just gouge them through the stomach with the handle, or just beat them relentlessly with the guitar. And then after he's done beating them in with the guitar, and the guitar is destroyed and all that, you just see Bonnie walk over to like a closet and pull out another guitar to make it look all cartoony, where it's like, oh shit, he just killed this guy, and then to make it all silly, he just pulls out another guitar. Well, technically, you don't even have to add in the protect part, because that part would be more implied with like the whole animatronic thing in general, and that's if you're trying to like make them more security bots. It should just be strictly they're there for entertainment. They're not there to shield anybody. They're not there to help anyone. They're just there to do the job they were designed for, and then some kind of strange flaw is what's making them murderous. And like even when you try to interact with them and tell them to do something different, they're going to interpret it differently. So like normally you'd be like, okay, Chica, command, go to stage, and normally she would go to stage. If she was in like a murderous moment, you could see someone trying to do the same thing to her, but instead she like grabs you by the leg as she's going to the stage, but then she's like dragging you on the ground against like gravel or wherever, depending on her location of like where is she exactly, or she like tosses you on the stage and then proceeds to do whatever else, like just completely misunderstanding. Chica starts out as your friend helping you with something. She haven't anticipated. I mean, that was literally what they were going to do with Glamlock Freddy, because there was supposed to be a moment in the game where he gets corrupted and turns evil, and he starts being really creepy and starts like talking to you really slowly. Like there's game files of it on YouTube of Glamrock Freddy in this state, and he's all saying like Gregory, where are you? He's like, why are you hiding? I thought we were friends. I was like, oh hell no. And then I was like, why the fuck was this not in the game? It was creepy, and I was mad that it wasn't in the game. And it's funny because they do use the model of Shattered Glamrock for like the Halloween promotion stuff that they did, and then they used his body and removed the head for for the ruined version. They air quotes prototype one, which was stupid. I don't know why they did that, because it was all supposed to happen in a scene where he gets heavily damaged, and then they just kind of tossed him in for the ruined version. But yeah, like they did end up using his model kind of, but like they didn't use any of the cool stuff from Security Breach, and it would have been so fucking cool if they had done it. But yeah, that your idea, they literally had plans to do it, and they just, you know, they just pussed out on it, which is essentially the whole story with Security Breach in general is just big setups, good ideas, and then all came crashing down when they made the mistake of making the pizzeria bigger than it needed to be, and just a lot of nothing going on. And it's just ultimately less scary. Like there should have been a moment in the game where all the lights in the pizzeria go out, or at least like a good majority of them go out, and all you have are like a few neon lights to help guide you through the pizzeria. Yeah, a lot of the fan games I haven't seen. I've only seen like a small handful of them. But yeah, like there's just a lot of ideas that could have been done. I just think that the Security Breach was definitely a giant fumble. And it's good that they learned from their mistakes on that, but I really wish they had not just tossed away Vanny. Because they properly set her up to be like the next main villain, and just have like the next few games have to be with dealing with her. But then they just screw up, and it's all about Afton again, and now the Mimic, which personally I think the Mimic is just an extremely boring character. Like don't get me wrong, Secret of the Mimic did a good job establishing the character, but when you really boil it down to like just, oh, all the problems have to do with either this AI or this random fucking robot, then it just kind of takes away from everything else. It just makes it seem like everything else was pointless. It's all just this fucking robot. That's just my personal views of it. It just seems like we had all these characters have like important motivations and stuff like that, and now we just have a robot that just copies people. And then if we're going off of whatever ending we're going off of for Secret of the Mimic, now it's kind of like, it's like, oh, he has his schematics now. Is he gonna make his own mimics? Is everything just gonna be the Mimic AI but in like a different form? It's like, you know where it's going. It's going to be in like a perpetual state where it can constantly create more and more villains and stuff like that, but they're all just like a version of the Mimic or something. And if there is some kind of payoff, it's probably not going to be that interesting compared to the payoff we had in Sister Location and Ultimate Custom Night. And then the problem with the problem with a lot of the newer games is that they keep retroactively retconning certain things. And now that the Mimic exists, okay, here's one thing that never made sense to me. Why is it that the Mimic AI and the Mimic itself, why is it that they're able to contact people from outside their areas, especially from an extremely great distance? Like, you gotta think about it. How the hell did the Mimic get in contact with Cassie? Like, how did he know to contact her specifically? And how and in what way was he able to contact her? Because we never see how the Mimic contacted her in the first place. We just know that she got his message because she thought it was Gregory. And I'm like, how the fuck did it even know who you were? And how did it contact you? Because we all know her ass wasn't in the fucking pizzeria when all the shit went down and it got destroyed. So how the hell did it contact her? And then we don't even know how the fuck the Mimic is even there in the first place, because all the events that have to do with the Mimic and Gregory happen after Security Breach. So we're just missing this giant chunk of time that we have no information of at the moment. So right now we have to figure out how the fuck did the Mimic even know to contact Cassie in the first place, and how. I'll give the leeway that the fucking walkie-talkie that you find in the game gives the Mimic the ability to communicate with you, because you know it's a fucking walkie-talkie, even if it has bad reception. But yeah, it's just like a lot of stuff doesn't make sense, because they do it again in Secret of the Mimic, where M1 contacts you as your I believe it happens when you're driving up to the building, that you get like a weird staticky thing, but it could also happen in the building as well. But I want to say it happens outside the building, because during one of the endings, when you're driving away and dispatch says like, "Hey, we've been trying to contact you all day," that means that the interference could happen outside the building to that range. My question is, how and why would it even do that? So to start off with, the Mimic has been pizzeria place. Well, I know all of that. Like, I know like all the lore and stuff from the books and shit like that. It's just the way they did it doesn't make sense. And then we have to explain why the Mimic was in the pizzeria to begin with. Because if we're going off of Secret of the Mimic, right now it just kind of walked away outside, assuming that's the correct ending that we're going with. And so now we gotta establish all of the chain of events that got him down there. Because right now we gotta explain how the fuck Gregory knows about it. Because we went from Gregory being established as not knowing what the fuck is going on at the beginning of the game, because that game tried to play it off as if Gregory was just some kid who didn't know shit, to suddenly he is a expert hacker who knows all this shit about the Mixes program and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, how the hell did you even get roped into this scenario? Because we're missing like we're literally missing like 1 or 2 games worth of information, because they did not show it yet. And we don't even know what Gregory's deal is to begin with, because depending on where you go about it in terms of theories and stuff like that, it's implied that Gregory could be a robot, but I don't know anymore, because their execution of Gregory doesn't make sense right now. Because either he's a robot, he's a really smart kid, or he just gets randomly thrown into these scenarios with no explanation. And if he is a hacker, why couldn't he just hack his way out of the fucking pizzeria? He clearly knew how to sneak in and shit like that, and hack the game so that all the games had his high score, or at least going off of the books that was the case. So I don't know. Wherever they're going with, they really need to hammer down what their story is and properly explain how everything works, because even though the mimic was first established in the books and stuff like that, tossing his ass in fucking Ruined is just a giant question mark, because it's like, why? And to what significance is the mimic even a big deal? That's the other part. It's like, if the mimic ends up not being some big major payoff, it's gonna feel like all that was a waste of time for some random fucking robot nobody cared about to begin with. Like, the most we cared about with the fucking mimic is just because it has David's personality from Secret of the Mimic. That's it. That's like the most we give a shit about the mimic. Yeah, but then it just falls into the whole like, oh, we're not human, we're all robots type of thing, and I'm just like, that just feels so like a cop out. Like Gregory is already being mishandled as a character to begin with, because at the very beginning of Security Breach, he already expresses that he doesn't trust Vanessa, which makes no damn sense, because as far as he's aware, Vanessa is just a security guard for the pizzeria. And if he wants to leave the pizzeria, which is the main goddamn goal of the game, why wouldn't he talk to the fucking security guard? Because he has no clue that Vanessa was Vanny in the beginning of the game. Vanny just randomly shows up 2 times in the game. No, 3 times in the game she shows up. 4 if you end up having her spawn randomly. That's the only other time she shows up. 5 if we're counting the ending. If we're counting her endings. So yeah, like Vanny realistically has nothing to do with Vanessa whatsoever. And so there's zero reason for Gregory to not trust her. He just decides to not trust her. It's like, damn, of all the people I should be trusting to get me out of this fucking building, it should probably be the people that are running the goddamn building. Like, we get no context to why he should be afraid of her. Yeah, like, if they're trying to make it seem like he knows a lot more than he's letting it out, they did a horrible job showing that. Because we get no knowledge of how smart he is. We get no knowledge of why he's in the pizzeria to fucking begin with. We get no knowledge to why he doesn't trust Vanessa. We get no knowledge to how he snuck into Freddy. He just he just does it. We get no context to that. There's like 2 or 3 games worth of information about Gregory that we have 0 about. And then suddenly in fucking Ruin, he just talks about all this, like, oh, the mimic, the thing in there has been down there for a very long time. The Nexus program, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, bitch, how the hell do you know any of this? And that's assuming that the books have nothing to do with this. Like, if we're going off of the books, that's a whole other fucking rabbit hole to deal with there. Because the books are so fucking inconsistent. So, yeah. It's like, Five Nights at Freddy, like, okay, if we're trying to have like a consistent story, we need to know if Five Nights at Freddy's has a lore master. Like, we need to know if there's somebody who's specifically hired to pay attention to all the events that happen in the games and make them make sense. And not just throw in random characters and then explain them later. Because obviously that was the early days of FNAF with Scott, where he was kind of just throwing shit in the air and seeing what happens. Because that's just how it played out, which ironically kind of played out pretty damn well for the most part. But now with the newer games, it's like, you can't do that. And obviously with Security Breach, it's a special case because when Scott was working with Steel Wool making that game, he didn't tell Steel Wool everything about what he wanted to do. He was he he was operating in the sense where he knew what the story bits were, but Steel Wool didn't. So whenever Scott would say, "Hey, add this into the game," Steel Wool would have to figure out how to add that to the game. So in Security Breach's case, it's a special scenario where Scott just did not communicate enough with Steel Wool to properly put things in places where they should be and stuff like that. But after that point, it's like, I don't know what you're doing, especially with Gregory suddenly knowing about computer shit in Ruin, because Ruin is after Security Breach. So at that point, that's where communication should have been a thing now. And then again, how the hell does the Mimic contact Cassie? Because that fucking came out of nowhere. And then that's the other thing. The Mimic is displaying that all he's doing is repeating what other characters say. Because that's all he was doing with Gregory's lines. He was just repeating words that he had previously said in the game, in Security Breach, to make it look like it was saying its own sentences and stuff like that. So if that's all the Mimic could do, then how is that being reflected in Secret of the Mimic? It's like, okay, how advanced is the Mimic at these 2 points? Because if we're going by Secret of the Mimic, they make it seem like the Mimics, both 1 and 2, are advanced enough to have their own conversations. But if we're going by the one in Ruined, it doesn't look like it can do any of that. So unless the one in Ruined is a completely different character, which again is another headache if they're just going to say every major problem is just a version of the Mimic, which I really hope is not the case, then it just feels like they really need to get a grasp on what they're going to do with the Mimic and Gregory and whoever else is involved, and make sure that the payoff is worth it. Because if it just boils down to some copycat robot causing problems, then it just makes everything else seem pointless. It was like, man, all these people died for nothing. This serial killer, this other giant interesting story about a serial killer and some ghosts, man, fuck that. We're just gonna talk about experimental robots, weird soul metal juice agony thing, and this robot that likes to copy people, and I guess a crazy lady that dresses up as a rabbit. That's what we all. That's where all that came down to. But anyway, yeah, looking forward to the next games. Why the hell a child in a pizzeria, please, in the middle of the night? Yeah, I mean, because it was softly implied that Gregory was homeless and was just kind of chilling in the pizzeria and hiding there. But then, because that would explain why he didn't want to run into Vanessa, because he's hiding out in the pizzeria, he doesn't want to get caught and kicked out or whatever, right? That would make sense. However, when at the beginning of the game, when he's running towards the exit and it closes down, he says, no, wait, I'm still here. That implies he's trying to leave. So that makes no sense. I personally hope the movies take their own path. Yeah. I think the movies are probably going to do a good job in having like their own setup and lore to be more cohesive and make sense and be more consistent with where they're going in that. So I think when FNAF 2 comes out, that's going to be fun. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that, because I think what the movies just need to focus on is just the ghost stuff. The ghost stuff makes way more goddamn sense, and we'll see where that goes. I mean, they could probably do something to corrupt the toy animatronics, maybe, but other than that, like, they should focus more on the ghost stuff, because that's the initial setup. So we'll see what happens there when the movie comes out. But but yeah, like security, like, and again, security breach's problem is that there was a lack of communication. So there's some leeway I can give to that, I guess. But even then, it's just even like even if the people didn't know what Scott was planning, just their initial setting up of the game, where it's like, we get no backstory or anything on Gregory. That's just kind of, or like his intentions and stuff. It just makes no sense. It's like, okay, you want to leave, but then we have evidence that he's been chilling inside the building, or at least somebody was at some point. And so it just doesn't line up with the actions of the characters. The toys are going to be semi-controlled by the marionette. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Like, I won't really have an opinion until I see it. But depending on how they go about it, it should be good. I like what I saw so far, so. Alright, anyway. I'm going to call it for the night. I'm still going to keep working on Chica and finishing her up. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I will stream again in the morning. And once I'm done with this, I'm going to get back to working on comic stuff and hopefully get the next page of Secrets out within the morning or so. Or today. I'm going to say today now since it's Wednesday now. Or is it Wednesday? Today is Wednesday, right? Yes, today is Wednesday. Damn. Tuesday went by fast. But yeah. Well, I'll get that out as soon as I can. I'm still working on it, but I'll try to be more quick about it. But yeah, thank you everybody for coming. And oh yeah, Matthew Lillard did a really good job. But yeah, you guys all take care. I will talk to you guys later. Bye bye.